Training camp is in session. Got the Broncos shirt on, and I am excited today to give you guys some best bets on season wins. We're going to have 2 unders, 1 over, and 1 team to watch. At a lot of sharps, a lot of people who say they're sharp, they're taking under. I'm going to tell you why you need to hold off on this team. So first up, before we get too far into it, I'm going to be referencing something called net yards per play often on this video, and you're going to hear it often on this channel when I'm talking about teams, if they look good, if they look bad. Basically, net yards per play has been used by a lot of bettors in the industry for a very, very long time. Now, it's not the end-all, be-all stat, right? Teams can overcome a net yards per play, but it has been used for a very long time, and it's always a good barometer to see kind of where a team really sits, right? The ball bounces a lot of weird ways, and that can be hard to gauge sometimes as a gambler. What's not hard to gauge is the efficiency of an offense and the efficiency of a defense. And net yards per play kind of rolls that all up together. What it's doing is it is literally taking offensive yards per play, so how many yards are you getting per snap on offense, subtracting your defensive yards per play, and that gives you your net yards per play. So every time the ball is snapped, you're either going forward or backwards X amount of yards. When you look at the leaders in net yards per play, it tends to make a lot of sense. Yes, there are going to be some outliers. I'll give an example, and I'll bring it up later in this video. San Francisco had 1 net yard per play. That is actually really good and on the high end last year. But not unsurprisingly, you saw the Baltimore Ravens lead the league at 1.6 on their net yards per play. Now, we all know Buffalo struggled a little bit on defense, which brought them down to 0.3. Now, offenses can overcome a lot of this, but really at the end of the day, it's just a good measurement of what a team looks like. We are going to start with the Los Angeles Rams, and we are going to go under that win total of 9.5. Now, why? We're going to go back to that net yards per play that I was just referencing. You might think that they were a positive team last year. They were actually negative 0.2 net yards per play, so slightly below the average of where you would want a team to be. Yet they still somehow managed to win the division. They still got in the playoffs. Matt Stafford is very, very good, so they were able to overcome a lot of things. But again, they overcame a lot of things. And what everyone's going to remember about the Rams is how the season ended. Driving in the snow, came up just short in Philadelphia. But if we take back, 10 minutes in that game, they're getting smoked. This game looks over. They look dead in the water. They led that furious comeback and then ended up coming up short. So my stats, my projections have the Rams finishing about 7.5 to 8 wins. And based off of that net yards per play, based off of how they performed last year, I think that's right. We also need to look at the other teams in their division. Seattle probably got worse. They probably stayed the same, but we're not too focused with them. Arizona, they've been improving year over year. Kyler has looked better year over year. They actually finished with a positive net yards per play as they finished pretty strong at the end of last year. And then we also have to look at the San Francisco 49ers. So they kind of surprisingly were at the high end of net yards per play at 1. So they had 1 net yard per play for the entire season. Some really bad turnovers by Brock Purdy did not help the case. They still have Kyle Shanahan. They're getting Christian McCaffrey back. This is one of those where if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, it's going to be very hard for the Rams to get to 10 wins and overcome that schedule. So the analysis. What to bet, when to bet. So I already told you I like that under at 9.5. Now, when to bet this is going to be important. You're going to want to bet this at right before kickoff on Sunday morning, that first Sunday of the year. Stafford and McVay have people on board with this team. People want to bet on the Rams. They remember Stafford winning the Super Bowl. They remember McVay going to 2 Super Bowls, and they remember that dramatic finish from the end of last year. But the bottom line is the stats say this team wasn't very good. the stats are borderline bad. I don't really see where they got much better. And if anything, now they have a 37-year-old quarterback instead of a 36-year-old quarterback with injury history. So with that, I love Rams under 9.5. So the next team I want to take a look at, who has pretty similar stats to the Rams actually, is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now they are at 10.5. I've heard some very smart people in this business talk about this team, that they're fading this team, and I see why. Every number I look at says Kansas City should go under. Right, all those close games they played last year, that generally reverts back to the mean, right? So you don't expect them to win as many close games as they did last year. All those coin flip games. On the surface, you would not expect them to win those. Not all of those. They'll win probably still a majority, but the number of times, right? The blocked kick against my Denver Broncos. The doink for the division against the Chargers. The Raiders fumbling away a clear winning opportunity at a last-second field goal in Arrowhead. And those are just 3 examples. The late flag against Joe Burrow and the Bengals to put the Chiefs in field goal range. They had a lot of those moments last year in the regular season. So it's hard to expect them to come out on top all of those times. Again, they had a negative net yards per play, not dissimilar from the Los Angeles Rams, why we talked about. So why am I not betting the under at 10.5? I'm actually getting an extra game than I got on the Rams, right? When it comes to betting that under. And for all the rigged conspiracy theorists, this is just red meat, and the NFL did the Chiefs no favors here. I think schedule is a big factor as to why I am not betting the under on Kansas City. They have Patrick Mahomes, and the schedule is going to be on their side. Now, you're not even going to believe it when I tell you this, but their schedule shakes out so nicely. Even the away games are set up for success. Let's first go through all of the games they have at home. So there are the Chiefs. They're playing a first place schedule. That means when they go cross conference, they're also playing a first place schedule. They are playing the NFC East. So there are a lot of good teams on that schedule. This is what I mean when I say the NFL did the Chiefs no favors for the people who believe that it is all rigged. Here is the list of all of the games they have at home and have managed to avoid playing on the road. Eagles are at home. The Ravens are at home. The Lions are at home. The Commanders are at home. The Colts are at home. Colts not great, but they are considered a contender for that AFC South. The Texans are at home, and then obviously they play the Raiders at home. They will play the Chargers at home, and somehow they managed to get the Denver Broncos on Christmas Day at home. So they're going to have Denver, one of the teams that played them the toughest last year. Oh, they played them tough last year? Okay, short week on a holiday on Thursday night. So now we look at the away games. They play the Chargers in Brazil. So now the Chargers just lost a home game, and the Chiefs are probably good. It's not a home game for the Chiefs, but it's equal travel, right? So that's not a true away game in terms of somebody's got a home field advantage of being able to stay at home. So they open with the Chargers. Now these are the other road teams they play. The Giants, terrible. The Jags, terrible. They do play the Bills on the road. Good job, NFL. You gave them one. When they play the Broncos, coming off of a bye. So they have one of their 2 toughest divisional rivals. They play one in Brazil. They play the other off of a bye. And then they play the Broncos on Christmas Day. Right? So going through the away games again. Chargers in Brazil, Giants, Jags, Bills, Broncos after a bye, the Cowboys, the Titans, and then the Raiders to end the season after playing the Broncos on Christmas Day. So, do the stats say the Chiefs should not win 10.5 games? Yes, but when I look at that schedule, right we're looking up. Let's count all those toss-up games, right? Eagles toss-up, Ravens toss-up, Lions toss-up, Commanders toss-up. We'll do Chargers as a toss-up and Broncos as a toss-up, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's say they win 4 of those, right? They go 4-2 in the toss-up games there. That means they're going to beat the Raiders, Colts, and Texans. So now you're already at 7 wins before you even play that soft away schedule. Now, let's even be super conservative, and we'll only give them 6 wins, right? Well, let's say the Texans or the Colts are able to knock them off. So let's give them 6 wins before that super soft away schedule. Chargers, toss-up game. Giants is a win. Jags is a win. Cowboys is probably a win. Titans is a win. And Raiders a win. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. So now you're already at 10 before they play the Broncos on a bye, or the Chargers in Brazil, or the Bills. Now, maybe they win 6 of those 7 tosses, or 7 of those. What you're seeing here is the schedule breaks very, very nicely for Kansas City. So I'm going to have to go no bet here. Yeah, all the stats say take the under. I'm not taking the under. These schedules set up great for them. And at the end of the day, in those close games, they do have Patrick Mahomes. They do get the benefit of the doubt. They do get the superstar calls. And that's okay. That's part of the game. And that is why I am not betting the under on the Kansas City Chiefs. Next up, we have the Chicago Bears. Ben Johnson comes into town to team up with Caleb Williams. But unfortunately for the Chicago Bears, I will be going under 7.5 wins. So Ben Johnson is great. Is he worth 2.5 wins? I'm guessing probably not, and that is what it would take, because the stats, quite frankly, were terrible last year and indicate about 5.3 wins this season. They had the worst net yards per play last year at negative 1.4. Now, will Ben Johnson be able to improve some of that? Absolutely. Does that mean they're going to win another 2 to 2.5 games? I have a really, really hard time seeing that. And there's a couple reasons as to why. Do you trust Caleb Williams to play on time? I do not, at least not yet. So there's a couple things to remember here. Caleb has always been a playmaker, but has always had issues playing on time. This is one of his knocks coming out in the draft a couple of years ago. He's always been a great off-script player. Ben Johnson is a very much on-script offensive scheme. So much so that let's go back to those early days of Dan Campbell's Detroit Lions. Year 1 was awful. Year 2 was pretty bad until the end of the season, where they saw improvement late. I think that could be the case with Chicago here. I think they're going to come out September, October. They're going to struggle. But November, December, I think we pick up, and I think they see that light at the end of the tunnel, and next year might be that year for the Chicago Bears. So the other piece to Chicago is this division, along with the AFC West, and I'd say probably the AFC North, are far and away the toughest. So they have to deal with 2 games each against playoff teams in Green Bay, Detroit, and Minnesota. That's 6 games right off the top where they're going to be dogs or even big dogs. They also have the misfortune of playing that difficult aforementioned AFC North. So San Francisco, who finished 4th in the division, despite having that great net yards per play that I mentioned earlier, they are likely going to be a lot better, and Chicago has to play them. They also have to play the NFC East, who has the reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year and the reigning Super Bowl champions. So it is not looking great for Chicago's win-loss. So to see this set at about 7.8 if you take into the fact of how it's weighted. We're going to go under 7.5 here. But long term, I think Ben Johnson is a good coach. I think he's a great coach. If there's anybody who can get the most out of Caleb Williams, it is going to be him. But in 2025, when it comes to win-loss, overcoming the worst net yards per play, plus Caleb Williams' first year in the system, this mountain is just too big to climb. Last team I want to take a look at, and this is going to actually be a rare over. We are going to go with the team that had the number 1 overall pick in the draft, the Tennessee Titans. It is right now sitting at 5.5, and I think this is a great number. So a lot of people, and I think part of the reason it is so low is they had the number 1 draft pick, so people are assuming this team is terrible and that they absolutely suck. However, they only had a slightly below average net yards per play from last year. In 2024, their big issue was not offensive and defensive efficiency in terms of a play-by-play basis. It was the big mistakes. They had made a lot of turnovers. In 2024, they had the second most interceptions and the second most fumbles lost. If they can clean up just one of these, which lost fumbles can be a bit of a random stat with the way the ball bounces. So if they can clean up the INTs and maybe get some better luck on the fumbles, their wins should be able to increase somewhat substantially. So right now I see them finishing at about 7.5 wins, and we're at looking at like 5.5 right now on most sports books that I can see. So the defense and offense from a yards standpoint were actually really not that bad in terms of efficiency. Last benefit they're going to get here is they play in probably the weakest division in the AFC. They do have to overcome the Colts and the Texans, but I really don't think their roster was that far off. Stats indicate they were right there with them. Will Levis was just turning the ball over way too much last year, which is how they ended up with the number 1 overall pick. Cam Ward, he doesn't even have to protect the ball that much. He just has to do better than Will Levis. So it's a pretty low bar to clear for Cam Ward, and if he can clear that low bar, I think they clear that season win total. Thank you guys so much for watching. A lot more pre-season picks coming your way for the NFL and for college football. If you're into the Heisman race, go ahead and check out that video below on Heisman odds, who I'm picking and why I'm picking them, and who I am staying off. Until next time, remember to bet smart and lift heavy.